Is driving while conversing on a cell phone worse than driving while drunk? Well, it's a hypothetical question, but the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration just completed a study that showed that 75% of all traffic accidents were preceded by some type of driver distraction in 3 seconds prior to the crash. So some cell phone do's and don'ts: quite simply, limit use while you're driving. Try not to engage in emotional conversations. If you can, use a hands-free device. It at least frees up your hand to put it on the steering wheel. We do know that even if you do use a hands-free device, that still distracts you. Typically when people have conversations, the first thing that goes out the window is their ability to check the rear view mirror and the side mirrors. Then also I would encourage you to not only establish a company policy, but certainly follow it and enforce it. It's in place to prevent people from having crashes. Make adjustments to your vehicle controls before beginning to drive. If you drive in a common motor pool or common fleet, and you may drive a different vehicle each day or each week, make sure those adjustments are made and that you're familiar with the controls before you get in that vehicle. Don't reach, pick up, open, or clean objects while driving. Not only is this distracting, but it pulls you away from the steering wheel. As I mentioned, the cell phone, certainly hands-free operation. And I would tell you, if you did have to engage in a long conversation, pull over, and also be familiar with the features of the phone. Fatigue driving is involved in over 100,000 crashes annually, and over 40,000 injuries annually, and over 1,500 deaths annually. 51% of adults have driven while drowsy, and 17% of adults have fallen asleep while driving. Do you know when you're driving drowsy? Here's some warning signs of fatigue. You don't remember the last few miles that you've driven. You hit a rumble strip or you drift from your lane. Your thoughts wander and they're disconnected. You're yawning repeatedly, and you have a difficulty focusing or keeping your eyes open. Be aware during late night, early morning, and early afternoon. It's important to get a full night's rest. A brief rest stop of even 15 minutes can be helpful. And plan to make stops every 2 hours. Avoid medications that may make you drowsy, and certainly avoid taking medications if you don't know they could make you drowsy. And try to set realistic goals for the number of miles driven in a day. Aggressive driving typically encompasses unsafe driving behaviors. Harmless maneuvers can be aggressive when performed knowingly or without regard for others. Road rage is defined as using a vehicle as a weapon with intent to do harm or physical assault of an individual as a result of a traffic occurrence. An aggressive driver can easily develop road rage, which is driving under the influence of too much anger. We know that it's provoked by feeling endangered by someone else's driving. For example, another driver cuts you off or tailgates you. Resentment at being forced to slow down. Righteous indignation at someone who breaks the traffic rules. And certainly anger at someone taking out their road rage on you. And realistically, the only therapy for road rage is just to take a deep breath and let it go. You've got really two options. That option, to take a deep breath and let it go, or you can choose to escalate it. I think we all know where that's going to end up. Certainly allow enough travel time to reach your destination. Don't worry about the behavior of other drivers. Give others the benefit of the doubt. Reflect, reframe, and refocus. As much as possible, try to personalize that other driver. They are a mother, they're a brother, they're a son, that type of thing. And really, as I've mentioned, the only therapy for road rage, take a deep breath and just let it go. Certainly, in the environment plays a factor in driving. One of the major factors that we can control, however, is our speed, so slow down as much as possible. Use a 3-second following distance. That is when the vehicle in front of you passes a fixed object. Count 1001, 1002, and then at 1003 you should be at or near that fixed object. In adverse weather conditions and snow, ice, black ice, without analog brakes, use the off-off technique. With analog brakes, keep your foot firmly on the brake. So two different types of brake systems. The ABS system is designed to have your foot planted firmly, and with the anti-lock brakes, the off-off or pumping technique. Time and location: more than 40% of fatal collisions occur between 9 p.m. and 6 a.m. October, May, and September had the most fatal collisions. As we mentioned before, the weekends had the most traffic deaths. It's interesting to note that secondary routes accounted for the largest percentage, 37.7% of fatal collisions. There's a study by Virginia Tech, a one-year study, 241 drivers, over 2 million miles driven. 80% of crashes involved some form of inattention within 3 seconds prior. We know that drowsiness increases a driver's risk of crash or near crash by 4 times. The most common distraction for drivers is the use of cell phones. Reaching for a moving object increased the risk of a crash or near crash by 9 times. So a lot of risk factors here, a lot of things that can increase our risk for crash listed here. Thinking about your travel distance, certainly your speed dictates that. But if we looked at in perfect conditions, here we have the stopping distance from different speeds with good brakes on dry pavement with good tires. At 20 miles per hour, it takes an average passenger vehicle 43 feet to stop. At 30 miles per hour, that's 80 feet. Think about the time that it takes you to see the danger, what's going to cause you to stop, your thinking distance or your reaction distance, the time that it takes you to apply the brakes, and then actually the time that the vehicle, that braking distance for the vehicle. So at 70 miles an hour in perfect conditions, that's 335 feet, and that's assuming really good reaction time. So if your reaction time were slowed or doubled, if conditions were worse, if the road were wet, if your tires didn't have great tread, a lot of different factors can add to this and potentially double your stopping distance. Defensive driving techniques, the number one rule is always scan the road ahead of you to determine any upcoming or possible problems, then be prepared to stop, change lanes, move on to the shoulder, etc. Use the right edge of the pavement as a guide if you're blinded by the bright lights of an oncoming vehicle. If you're being tailgated, increase the following distance to the car in front of you, 4 to 5 seconds. That's really all you can do. Tapping your brakes is only going to probably infuriate the driver behind you, and that's, as we talked about, road rage. You've got 2 options there, to let it go or to escalate it. When approaching an intersection where the light has been green for a while, decrease your speed and cover the brake. This is called a stale green light. If you didn't see it turn green, you don't know how long it's been green, so be prepared to stop by covering the brake. Statistics show for every 10 miles per hour faster you drive over 50 miles per hour, the fatality rate doubles. So for example, at 60 miles per hour, the fatality rate is doubled. At 70 miles per hour, 4 times higher fatality rate. At 80 miles per hour, 8 times higher fatality rate. And at 90 miles per hour, 16 times higher fatality rate. Our vehicles, our roads are just not designed for these types of speeds. The faster you drive, the greater chance of dying as a result of an accident. More defensive driving techniques. Check your rearview mirror anytime you use your brakes. When at a traffic light and waiting to make a left turn, keep your wheels pointed straight. If you had your wheels turned left or you're waiting to turn right, if you were hit from the rear, you'd be pushed out into traffic. When you're going to change lanes, always turn on your signal and look in your blind spot. When your vehicle begins to skid, turn in the direction of the skid, and always have your lights on during rain, fog, snow, dawn, or dusk, anytime where there's decreased visibility. When another driver's passing you, move to the right and be ready to slow down. You don't have to pull off the road, obviously, but just be prepared for that person to duck back into your lane. When negotiating curves, slow down before you enter the curve. As we've mentioned before, we know that speed kills. Drive the speed limit, reduce your speed based on the weather conditions as well. Expect the unexpected, look out for animals, trees in the road, any sort of thing. Depending on the time of the year, that might be deer, so just be wary on the time of year and also the time of day. Always check the shoulder of the road. You may have to pull onto the shoulder if another driver makes a mistake, so always look for an out. Seeing and being seen. Keep the windshield and mirrors clean and clear, and use your mirrors, not only the rear view but also the side view. Constantly scan traffic to the front and to the sides. Look 10 to 12 seconds ahead in the city. Look further ahead on the highway. Use mirrors before changing speed or traffic in position. Signal all turns and lane changes. Keep your signal